Well, hello friends, I'm David Vos. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. It's a cloudy, kind of rainy day in Texas. It's been a little while since we've seen rain like this. Well, friends, got an important video here. I want to delve into something that we all know, and yet we do not know. This is sort of it's like a trick that our mind plays on us. It really is kind of odd that we can do this to ourselves. It probably has something to do with, instinctual behavior, that it's triggered in us. All of us, just like an animal, has this triggered behavior, this mesmerism within us that seems to keep us in the pack, following the leader. You don't see too many dogs getting outside the pack because they gang up together because together they take care of each other. But instinctual, programmed, animalistic behavior does serve to take care of themselves. It's not good for the rabbit because the rabbit's probably going to get killed. However, the rabbit's got his own instinctual behaviors evolved. They'll bounce around and do this switchback thing. See, they're not faster than the dog. That coyote is faster than that rabbit, but he almost never catches that rabbit because the rabbit can switch to the left and then switch back to the right and confuse the wolf or the coyote. And he's made holes every so many feet, and he's designed it that way so that he doesn't go far from his little hole to forage for his food and so forth. And he keeps, if you've ever noticed squirrels when they're out doing their thing looking for nuts or whatever, they keep their tails in the air, and their little tails are always twitching. This is an instinctual behavior that saves their lives, because you see, that way the other little groundhogs or squirrels can see them from a distance, and their tail is sort of a language. They'll make a little noise, a little bark, or like a little tiny bark. Really, groundhogs are really, like little dogs. They're very related to the dog family. That's why you notice that when the dog's running and he thinks he's onto the trail of a rabbit or something, his tail starts a twitching. Well, the same thing with these little groundhogs. Their tails twitch as originally because of this instinctual behavior to keep themselves safe. They would twitch their little tail in order to give a sign to the other chipmunks that are nearby or the other groundhogs nearby. So they have these little instinctual behaviors that can save their lives. It has evolved and changed and been modified for the wolves and the coyotes. They use their tail, they wag back and forth to show their happiness. Or they can stick that tail straight up in the air, see, which is a layover from the instinctual behavior from when they were little chipmunks, where they've evolved from this particular behavior, which is evidently a latent genetic behavior that has something in common with the chipmunk, because they stick their tail straight up in the air when they see the bird or the rabbit. It's kind of like, okay, pay attention. Any other dogs that's near in the pack, my tail's in the air, there's something coming. It's either a warning or it's like, it's dinner, whatever it is, but it has something to do with a signal. So there are tons of things like this that is literally like a program that are programmed into animals and their behavior. Now, this is something as Christians that we've got to put into perspective, because Christians teach that we are humans, we are the children of God, we're the rulers of this earth, we are not animals. But yet, if you think about it, our behavior is no different than animals, and it is really hampering us. But see, that behavior is that the chipmunks and the dogs have can save their life, but they're doing it to help themselves, to get food or to warn the pack. But for humans, we have evolved to a place where this behavior, this program, is killing us. We've got to realize that the program that's causing us to go running to our church or sitting in front of our television sets believing every word of it, no matter whether or not it is a lie or not, we allow ourselves to believe it. Now stop and think about what I'm saying. You sit down in front of the television, you know full well you're an intelligent, logical, conscious being. You can think into the future, you can plan events, you are intelligent, you can use math and science. Humans are amazing, far more advanced than animals. But why is it that somehow or another, like a cat that gets entranced by this little bouncy ball that's going back and forth, and she just can't stop playing with this little ball, right? Because that's a way that she learns to hunt mice. And this is why that's in their little genes, to keep them mesmerized, because this is what they're going to have to do to keep alive. However, the humans are doing a lot of stuff nowadays that is not part of our environment, that is not making us safer, and is not helping us. Sitting in front of the television set is going to kill you. It's not giving you exercise. It's not feeding you. You're not foraging for food. You're not doing anything productive. But here is the thing that I think is amazing, the most amazing thing. And it's actually very difficult to try and figure out why this is in us. I think it's somehow been programmed into us because it doesn't seem to have any other purpose. But humans seem to have this uncanny ability, I guess over thousands of years, of doing what they're told, whether or not it is the correct thing to do or not. Now, you can understand maybe where this began because of the fact that the Bible's like 4,000 years old. And, of course, we know that these laws that the Bible has about slavery probably goes back way many thousands of years from Babylon or further back. The laws of Hammurabi are very similar to the laws of Moses. And they go back even further than the laws of Moses. So at least 4,000, maybe 5,000 years ago, we know that human beings were enslaving other human beings. And one of the ways in which they were able to do that is to give these human beings a law and say, okay, now I'm the king. Now we're told that these kings were from literally another bloodline, from another, perhaps from another planet. They were, according to the Bible, they were the sons of the gods. They were the heroes, the giants that came to the earth and demanded that the human beings obey them. And they made laws. And now I want you to think about the first law that these gods made for mankind. The first law was with Moses, and I know there's so many Christians today that really believe that the law of Moses is still in effect, at least the Ten Commandments, and they're moral, and they're correct, and they're right, and what would we do without them? Well, think about these Ten Commandments. I want you to really think about them, because you've been deceived. And wait till you find out just how far you've been deceived. This is integral to your freedom, to your life, to your happiness, friends. So I hope you will all not click off and just listen for a little while before it upsets you enough to click off. Because if you really think about this and take time to think about it, it could literally change your life for the better. So much better, friends. Well, let's go back to these 10 commandments that we've always been told are moral and good. Now, the first commandment is, I'm paraphrasing, of course. The first commandment is, look, I am God. You will not bow down to any other god but me, or I will murder you dead. You will not make images to any other god or bow to any other god from the other nations, number 2, because I will punish you to the 3rd and 4th generation. See, I'm not even going to, it's not just going to be I'm going to punish you. I'm going to punish your children and their children and their children. See, I do not forget when you cross me. And number 3, my name is sacred. You will not profane my name, because if you do, I will murder you. Now, how about the 4th commandment? That's got to be something moral, like, love somebody or do good deeds or some nice thing like that. No, the 4th one is, and I'm sure most of you are going to say, oh, I know what that one is. That's the Sabbath. See, we owe that to God. See, it's all these commandments are what we owe to this God, how we're his servants, right? There's nothing about, loving people or anything in here. See, I know you're going to say, well, this is the Sabbath and God created us and we should be so thankful, so therefore we should, get down on our knees every Sabbath and worship him. That's not even what this law is. This law says you will work and be my slave for 6 days. How come people forget that part? See, they're all talking about the Sabbath, the seventh day you can rest. No, it's not, oh, wow, how wonderful, we get to rest on the Sabbath. No, 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 no. You see, what you get to do on the Sabbath is go in for your instructions. Because you're going to have to work 6 days as my slave, God says. You will not get to go out and play down at the river or, lollygag around. You better get to work. You get out there in the field and you work. So then there's the fifth commandment. Now again, this always comes off as some kind of a moral commandment. Honor your father and your mother. Well, that sounds good. Of course you should, right? Who wouldn't honor their father and their mother? But you don't understand what this is about. This is about obedience. Do you understand? This is about obedience and nothing else. This is not a moral commandment. If you love somebody, you don't need somebody to tell you to love them. It does not say you must love your father and their mother. It says you must show them respect. That means you must be obedient. See, and going along with this commandment is later on in his judgments, he says, what happens if you don't be obedient to your father or your mother? They'll hang you up and beat you 39 stripes with a rod. They will beat you, but not to death. You can't beat them to death, but almost to death. Okay, so then there's the sixth commandment. Now we're getting into some moral commandments, right? Some nice moral commandments. Don't murder. Okay, well, wait a minute. Jesus is the one who came with morals. He's the one who said, love one another. See, that takes care of all of the things you need to know. But no, not this law. This law says, don't murder your neighbor or your brother because, they're my servants. I don't want you murdering my servants. But I want you to murder all the other nations around you because they don't worship me. I want you to go in and kill them. I'm the God of war. I will teach your hands for warfare. You must murder them all, every man, woman, and child, and bash the little babies against the sides of the rocks. Oh, you can keep the women for your concubines and so forth, but you got to kill the men and the little babies and the donkeys. All right. The next commandment is don't commit adultery. Well, that's got to be a good one, right? That's surely a moral commandment. Do you understand what adultery is? This doesn't even apply to men. It only applies to women. Women are the slaves of their men, their husband, which means owner. And the woman was bound by the law of her husband. She was purchased with a price. And and of course, that's the 12th commandment, if you read down here, where a man will sell his daughter as a slave. That's the only commandment in the Bible that has anything to do with what we call marriage. That's why you wear a ring on your finger, because it explains in there that you put that ring on them as a sign of their permanent slavery. So women were slaves just like some of the men, but the women were never allowed to become free. You were bound by that law of your husband. This Jehovah originally put that curse upon Eve. That's where it all began. She says, because you've done this, you'll be dominated by your owner, by your husband, your master. So I don't know if you think that's moral, but a woman was never allowed to choose who she could fall in love with. And after she was purchased with money as a slave woman, if she ever tried to run away, they murdered her. Do you think that's moral? All right, we can go on and on and on, but, like I said, most people have no idea that the 11th commandment is about slavery, taking people as slaves, whole nations as slaves. And the 12th commandment, of course, is selling your daughter as a slave. Now, the reason why I cover this, because this video I don't think is really primarily about the law of Moses, but I'm trying to understand why are humans like this today, where we sit in front of the television and there's this guy on television telling us nothing but lies, and we all know it's a lie. We all know that the whole commercial is bent upon trying to deceive us and persuade us by any means necessary to go and buy their product. They will lie about how healthy the product is. They will try to deceive you as to whether or not it could cause damage to you. They're only going to tell you what good things they think this product may have. Maybe it tastes good. Because you see, the reason why it tastes good, and we all know why, because they put chemicals in there that could kill you. But they don't tell you that. So we understand that the entire commercial is a lie. In fact, their entire product is a lie. It is a weapon. You are being sold a weapon to kill yourself with. Come buy this weapon. Don't be afraid, because we said it, and we said it's good for you. But you see, we know it's not good for us. So why do we allow ourselves to sit in front of the television, mesmerized to the television, with big smiles on our faces? You see, you just look at these commercials where they're trying to sell you the drugs. You got all these happy faces that have butterflies, right? A guy and a girl, just happen to kind of in slow motion with this big smile on her face, and she's giving this guy a little daisy, and he's like, oh, and there's a dog, and it's all wonderful. And there's some guy dancing because he just took one of the purple pills or something, right? They're trying to deceive you, and you know it, but yet you still sit there and you don't complain that commercial comes on every 10 minutes. Oh, and then right after that, it's my pillow, my pillow, my pillow. It just won't stop. This pillow commercial's got to go. I'm sick of this guy. What's that guy's name? I mean, now they've got one where this poor man opens I guess he's in a motel, is what it looks like. And he opens his medicine cabinet, and whoa, this guy's like a peeping Tom looking right at him, like, hi, oh, you're the pillow guy. And he's like, yeah, and he's talking like he's got this weird voice. He sounds like Mr. Rogers, like we're little children. What he's really doing is mesmerizing you. This is something that they've learned to do. It's hypnotism. That guy that's selling the pillows is hypnotizing you with this Mr. Rogers type talking. I guarantee that guy doesn't talk that way in real life. He's gone to some kind of classes, some kind of school, and he's hypnotizing you because he wants you to buy this pillow. And we know that it's just a pillow. And you can go down to the Walmart and buy a pillow for $10. But I guess it's like $49.99 or something to buy one of his pillows. But for some reason, you're convinced that pillow, you've got to have that pillow. You see, why are we allowing ourselves to do this if we are intelligent, rational human beings with the ability to somehow progress and advance in technology and in wisdom? Why are we then doing this to ourselves? Perhaps we are not able to advance in technology and wisdom. Perhaps we are just animals, and this mechanism within us that, like the wolves and the chipmunks have, that is used for their advantage to survive, perhaps that is being used against us now, and we don't have enough common sense to snap out of it. And here's the reason why we can't snap out of it, friends, and this is the reason that we've got to pay attention to this very, very, very carefully, because if we don't get this, we're not going to make it. It was this God, thousands of years ago, that came to this earth and made us his slave and made a law and demanded that we keep it and that we become his slave. And, now if some guy came down off a mountain smoking and on fire, right, he says, hey, some guy in a ship just landed on this mountain, and he's chosen me to be your ruler, and here are some laws, and he wants everybody to keep them. Here's the first law. You are my slave. Do you think anybody in the United States would keep that law? No, we realize that we're not going to be slaves to nobody. That's over. We are not going to be anybody's slave, and we know it's not from our Father in heaven. If somebody came down on a mountain with darkness and smoke and fire and demanded that we all get down on our knees and worship him, we would say he's Satan. Well, friends, that's what Jesus said. He said to the Jews, your God, your father is the devil, and he's a liar, and he's a murderer from the beginning. And he's a slanderer, and he accuses you day and night before my Father's throne. My Father is love. And there's freedom in my law, because my law is the law of love. And there's forgiveness and grace and truth. Moses brought the law, but I bring the truth. And in your law it says, but I say, no, do not stone that woman, you hypocrite. We're going to have to wake up, friends, because we've been duped. And it's not just the law that's duping us, okay? But that's the primary thing, that we're still going every Sunday down here to this building, getting down on our hands and knees, worshiping this God that's demanding that we make our women our slaves, and they may never leave us, and our parents are going to beat us with a belt if we don't do what they say. And we've been told and conditioned to believe that this is great, that we should all be slaves. Somewhere along the line, in the last 100 years or 150 years, we realized that, oh, wait a minute, parts of these laws are really hideous. Slavery, right? Okay, we don't want that anymore. Animal sacrifices, human sacrifices, like Abraham trying to sacrifice his son Isaac to this God Jehovah. So we understand that most of this is insane, but yet, oh yeah, but the first 10 commandments are moral. See, we're supposed to be slaves and slave for this God for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, we must go and read out of the book, the holy book that tells us that we're all slaves and how to become slaves and just how to put the rock and make the altar and how to sacrifice the animals and how to beat our wives and our children and force the world to bow down to this God. This is what we do on the Sabbath. This is the moral commandments. Well, we don't do most of that anymore, but we're still under the delusion that this is a good God and these commandments are good commandments, even though we don't keep any of them. None of us keep any of these commandments. You think that God is so great, why don't you go out and keep his commandments, friends? I dare anybody to go out and actually keep the commandments. Go be the slave to that invisible God and work like a slave for 6 days, from sun up to sun down. And on every Sabbath, you start reading aloud in the book. And you teach your children all the words of this book. And you demand that they be your slave. And you tell your wife, from now on, you're going to do everything I say, or I'm going to beat you. And then you go out, you're going to keep this law, and you go out and you start murdering everybody in every town and every city that doesn't believe in this God. You're going to have to murder the whole world. And then turn around and say that Islam is evil. No. Your religion, if that's what it is evil, friends. And that's not our God, because our Father in heaven was Jesus' Father, and he's the God of love. And this is a whole new commandment, a whole new covenant, and a whole new book. It's a whole New Testament. And Jesus said that God is the devil, and we don't have anything to do with him. The Apostle Paul was beaten and stoned and left for dead and starved and shipwrecked to keep us free. He did everything in his power during his life to stop Christians from returning to the law and Judaizing. And he told us, do not keep that law. Ye who want to be under law, do you not understand? It is slavery. Galatians chapter 3 and 4. Read it, friends. But my point is this. Most of you actually aren't keeping the law, but you're schizophrenic because you think it's mandatory to keep and you're going to go to hell if you don't, but yet you don't keep it and you think it's bad. Come on now. Make up your mind. If you're going to live as a schizo, you're going to be mentally ill, as we all are. And this is why we sit around in our little bedrooms, frightened out of our minds, depressed and sad. We hate ourselves and we hate everyone else as well. Because how can we love if we are not first loved by the God that created us? If we think that somehow this God is a God of war and wrath, and he wants us to beat our wives and our children, then that's and go make everybody slaves and murder everybody that doesn't bow down to him, then of course that's how we're going to act. And we're not going to be happy. But here's the big revelation. The big revelation is this entire thing is destroying us in many ways that you cannot even imagine. Because even though we are not actually any longer bound to this old covenant, and we're not doing half the things that it says in there. We're still doing a lot of it, though. But we have become free of some of it, but not entirely in our minds. And here's the problem. It has somehow conditioned us, somehow by believing in your heart that your God is a tyrant and you're his slave, somehow it's made you think, because there's a scripture somewhere that says obey the governments, right? Because they're set in place by God, right? So you think, okay, and of course the governments are telling you from the time you go to school, you go to first grade, second grade, third grade, right? It's a 12-step education. And they tell you that you must be obedient. When the bell rings, you sit down. Look up at the chalkboard. Do what we say. Write it down on a piece of paper. If you don't get it right, you flunk. You got to go back. This is the way we've been taught. You've got to work. And whoever does not work, neither shall he eat. We don't need to work. Our Father in heaven has provided. Food just grows everywhere, all out there by itself. You got to do is go out there and forage for the food yourself and live happily ever after. We don't have to live in this nation state with the prisons and the walls and the war and the death and the plague. We don't have to. But yet we continue to do it, even though Jesus came to set us free. He came to set us free from that law and their governments. And he says, if the Son of Man sets you free, you are free indeed. You are under no law, the Apostle Paul says. We're the children of light, the children of the day. Let's go forward and act like it. But yet, to this very day, 2,000 years later, we can't get our minds out of this concept that we're a good for nothing, born in sin, unworthy of even being alive. And we need to be thankful that we even are allowed to breathe one more day in this world. And to show our thanks, we need to go out and become a slave, not only to God, but to the governments that were replaced by God. We need to go to work every day, and when we come home, sit in front of a television where a man with a white robe, who's supposed to be the ruler over us, the dossier, comes on in a commercial and tells us that we must go to the store and buy these drugs that are actually going to kill you. It's all a big lie. You know it's a big lie. You know this entire setup is just a big, huge lie. But you keep right on going up to the trough, putting your head through the two horizontal boards, and eating the straw that's in the little trough, and feeling thankful for our hay for the day. And then we go back to our little fenced-in area and stand in our own manure. Because that's all we are, is sheep. That's all we are. And that's all we're ever going to be if we cannot finally realize that we are being programmed. Everything they're telling us from our government, from our television, is nothing but a program, and we're being slowly programmed and mesmerized. And the My Pillow guy has got it down slick. Even though you can't stand that guy, you went out and got a pillow, didn't you? Didn't you? You went out and got a pillow. And even though that commercial on YouTube, it says, click here, goes on and on and on and on, what, 30 minutes? You sat there and watched the whole thing knowing that it was a big fraud, that there's no real miracle cure in this pill they're trying to sell you. But you sat and watched it anyway, didn't you? Because you are a slave and you enjoy being a slave, even though inside, deep down in your heart, you don't want to be a slave. You want to be free. But you can't. You don't have the courage. You don't have the strength. It's just the same thing as being addicted to heroin. You know it's not good. You know you shouldn't be addicted. You want to be free, but you can't. Because there's some mysterious force pulling you to that heroin. And that's what it is, friends. Somehow or another, these gods, way back when, they came to this earth and made us their slaves, and they programmed us. And now, in order to come out of this, we're going to have to accept the grace. And we're going to have to forgive ourselves and let go. We're going to have to let go of the pain, forgive everybody, and put it behind us. And we're going to have to accept the truth, because only the truth can set us free. If we hang on to these lies, we're not going to improve. We're going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. We've got a very short window, friends. Right now, we're being downloaded into the Borg. You come home, you watch a television, you've got your phone in your hand, you've got your radio going, you've got several different media going in. You're probably watching the news while you're watching a movie at the same time, or reading a book at the same time. You're probably trying to hold a conversation with text message with somebody else as well. And you look around and it's midnight, you got to go to sleep, and you got to get up in the morning at 5. You're stressed out of your mind, so you take some sort of drug to get through it, and you somehow think this is all normal because, hey, you got your pillow. And it's all going to be all right because you've been mesmerized. But it's not going to be all right, friends. It's not going to be all right. You're going to die. You're going to die very, very soon. A very cold and lonely, miserable death. It won't be long, and you'll be lying on that bed, and you'll be breathing your last breath, and you'll look up, and your children will be standing there looking at you. And then it's going to cross your mind that you never, ever did anything to help your children become free. And you know their fate is going to be exactly like yours. But friends, it doesn't have to be that way. We can live in a world where we are all happy. We can break all us little sheep if we want to. We can break down this fence and we can go over there to that cool stream under the trees where the flowers grow and the butterflies fly and the buffalo roam. And we can be the rulers of our own life and do what we want and be free and know that we can trust ourselves to love. We don't need to be under some law. We don't need to have somebody punish us because they say we've done something wrong. Trust yourself. If you get out of this world, your natural spiritual instinct is to love. This is not who we really are. We are not really animals. We are spiritual beings. But we're being treated like animals. And somehow or another, we have been programmed with a program that does not belong in us. And I tell you today that the creature that we call human is capable of far, far more than what we've been told. But the only way is to find the truth. And the only way to find the truth is to break away. See, you can never know the truth until you realize that you don't have it. Because you're not going to go looking for the truth if you think you've already got it. So if you're sitting there in your church, in your little pew, being told a bunch of garbage about how you're going to go to hell if you don't do what they say, you're never going to be able to find the truth doing that. Because you're instilling fear inside of your soul. You're programming yourself. You're murdering yourself. You're corrupting your program. It's time, friends, that we understood that we can break this cycle. Because Jesus said if we can get the word in our heart, which is the gospel of grace, if we can put that in our heart, we can be saved. But we've got to get it into our heart. And the only way is to believe it. That's the only way. Stop believing the lie. It's an accusation. It's a slander. Stop believing it. And all you've got to do is believe in the gospel. You are free. You will be born again, and you'll be born from above. But every time you listen to the lies, you are being corrupted and deceived. You're being brought down into the depths of this horrid, horrid world as a slave. And you won't be able to get out until you open up your eyes. Now, when Jesus came to the disciples after he had raised from the dead, he fed them some fish and some honey, which represents the enlightenment of the truth. And it says their eyes were opened and they recognized him. And that's what we've got to do, friends. But the first thing you've got to understand is that we're being lied to. The second thing is you've got to stop listening to the lie. It said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." And then you've got to believe in the gospel, which is not the words of a book, but the salvation of your soul and the truth that leads to eternal life. So go out there, friends, and tell the world the good news. This is David Vos. I'm going to go ahead and go. Hope you guys have a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow.